Hello and welcome to this special edition of the monthly Freight Loop. I'm Eirik Hooper and I'm joined by Eleanor Hadland, and today we're going to talk about how the Houthi attacks on commercial shipping in the Red Sea are impacting the global port sector.
Thanks, Eirik. Now, as I'm sure everyone's aware, the recent attacks on commercial shipping in the Red Sea by the Houthi rebels from their base in Yemen has led to major container shipping lines diverting ships around the Cape of Good Hope, leading to a sharp downturn in container vessels transiting the Suez Canal. For the port sector, the immediate impact has been on ports located in the Red Sea. Most notably, the Saudi Arabian ports of Jeddah and King Abdullah have seen vessel calls plummet since the start of the year. Our AIS database shows that at Jeddah, the average number of weekly calls has fallen 48% in the fourth quarter of 2023, when there was an average number of 43 vessel calls, to just 22 in January 24. And the situation is worse still in King Abdullah port, where the weekly vessel call count is down 76% over the same period.
Okay, so that's on the west coast of Saudi Arabia, but at least the country has alternative gateway ports on its east coast?
Yes, so the main east coast port for Saudi is Dammam, and that's seen an upturn in vessel activity, with the average number of weekly calls up from 11 in fourth quarter of 2023 to 13 in January. So an increase, but not a large one.
I see. Okay, so whilst for cargo to or from Riyadh, Dammam is an effective alternative with both road and rail options available, for cargo going to or from Jeddah and the western regions, then the time and the cost of the overland route is far higher.
Mm-hmm.
So how about ports in the regions that vessels are using the Suez Canal are destined for?
Well, it's an evolving situation. Drewry estimates that around 30% of global container vessel fleet, as measured by capacity, is impacted by the Red Sea diversions. And delays arising from a Cape route range from 10 days for vessels heading from Asia to Rotterdam and 15 days for an Asia Med route, for instance, to the port of Genoa.
So in the Med and Europe, which ports have lost the most port calls?
Well, so far it's been the East and the Central Med ports that are the worst affected. Mainline calls are down across all the major hubs here. So in Egypt, the average weekly capacity of vessels calling at the three main ports, that are East Port Side, and Damietta, is down by 31%. We've also seen steep declines in average weekly vessel capacity calling at the Central and East Med hubs. It's down 22% at Joy-Taro, 32% at Malta and 29% at Piraeus. As for the West Med hubs, well, they've reported a slight downturn in calls.
Yes, that's right, Eleanor. So these ports are strategically located to capture additional calls from diverted vessels. So I expect that these ports will see an upturn in vessel activity as carriers start to adjust their schedules in response to the Red Sea situation.
Okay. Do you think you could explain why?
Yes, of course. So whilst to the layman, it might be expected that vessels diverting around the Cape would call at the West Med ports first before progressing to the East Med, in practice, this is actually not so easy. The first wave of vessels diverted via the Cape were loaded in Asia before the Red Sea situation blew up. So reversing the order of the European discharge ports would add significant costs, not to mention it would cause even longer delays for shippers in the Eastern Med. So that was the first routing of vessels around the Cape. However, with no sign of when the security situation in the Red Sea will improve, we're now seeing carriers adapting their schedules to provide better service levels. So, for example, Maersk has announced that whilst its ME2 service, which links the Med to the Middle East and South Asia, will be diverted via the Cape of Good Hope, it will use its terminals in Algeciras and Tanger Med to provide onward connections to North Europe and the Med via a combination of relay transshipment onto other mainland services, calling at the port, but also onto feeder services.
Yes. Well, interestingly, Maersk has just completed the expansion of its Medport Tangier terminal, and that provides the carrier with an additional mainline berth and also adds 1 million TEU of capacity on an annual basis. So I guess Maersk in particular is particularly well placed to handle an increasing number of vessel calls at its West Med hubs. So I guess the next question is, with so many vessels diverted, is there a risk that congestion will occur when they do start arriving at the ports?
So far, our AIS data shows that waiting times remain low. And while the diversion's in place, we don't expect to see this become a major issue. As and when the Suez routing is reintroduced, then there is a risk of short-term disruption. as there will be a short period when there's a clustering of vessel arrivals at key ports, as some services still using the Cape route and others go through the Suez Canal. However, unlike the situation that arose during the pandemic, there was generally still good availability of terminal capacity across the major European ports. And also, inland transport networks are still operating well.
That's great. Thank you so much, Eirik, for providing such useful insights.
Thank you, Eleanor, and thank you everyone for listening. For anyone who wishes to stay up to date with the performance of the global container port sector, subscribers to our Ports and Terminal Insight report receive monthly updates tracking throughput, port calls, and operational performance at more than 190 global ports. Additional information can be found at www.drewry.co.uk or follow us on LinkedIn for more industry insights and analysis. We'll be back soon with more market briefings.